It's Boxing Insider Radio.
How dare them even to challenge me, these fighters, with their primitive boxing skills. You know what I mean? They're as good as dead.
I'm going to show you how great I am.
It's about how much you can take and keep moving forward.
I wish I was 50 years younger and I'd kick your ass.
Boxing Insider Radio, bringing you the very best in boxing from around the world.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to BoxingInsider.com radio. We are still in quarantine. I'm Larry Goldberg, the owner of BoxingInsider.com, and today we are joined by one of my favorite people ever, the world's most dangerous man, Ken Shamrock. Ken has been relevant in the fighting space from UFC 1, where he launched that promotion with Royce Gracie, till today, where he promotes Bare-Knuckle boxing under the banner of Valor. Ken just dropped a 400-plus page book. That's available on Amazon.com and wherever books are sold. This is actually Ken's very first interview on his book tour. And the reason that he chose Boxing Insider is because we got mentioned a few times in this book. I used to run KenShamrock.com and help out with their event bookings during his time in the UFC and beyond. I have a very unique perspective of how a lot of things went down. And I gotta tell you, I picked up the book last week and my head exploded. I mean, they're talking about drug dealing, wild sex parties, fixed fights, steroids. And I'd like to say I missed all the fun. We're going to talk about the Crooked reality show. We're going to talk about his relationship with Dana White. We're going to talk about Mike Tyson. We're going to talk about what happened to his fight with James Toney. This is a boxing show after all. We're going to take a trip down memory lane, and this should be a very fun conversation. I got to tell you, I'm really looking forward to this. So guys, Ken Shamrock. Joining us now on the phone is UFC legend, Ken Shamrock. Ken, how are you?
I'm doing well, Larry. How are you, brother?
Oh, I'm doing really good. So I just picked up your book the other day, and my head was blown. I thought I knew you guys. I mean, tell us a little bit about it. I don't even know where to start.
Yeah, when we first started the book, Jonathan Snowden wanted to write. At first, he was a little bit hesitant, and then when he started talking to people, started hearing some things, he was like immediately like, okay, yeah, I could do this, but just as long as I get to write it from like a third party, not really me controlling it, which I thought was better anyways, because you want the truth and you want people to be able to speak freely and not me per se telling you the story, because I could tell you whatever I want and have it backed up or have opinions from other people. And so I thought that the book was done well in that way, where that he spoke to over 100 people, and I thought he did a great job doing that. But at the same time, as you read the book, you also understand that there's some people in there that were disgruntled, that probably weren't very happy with the way that their lives turned out. And so they probably added a little bit more extra punch to some of their stories to try to hurt me or whatever. But it's real, though. I mean, it is what it is. And people have their opinions or their thoughts, and they say what they want to say. But the good thing is that, we get to talk about it. We get to actually talk about all these things that people have gone through, and the things that the fighters have gone through, and the things that I go through, and the family goes through, and that we get to dice them and break them down and dice them up and get it right.
Well, I ran your website from about UFC 40, which was your fight with Tito Ortiz, through your UFC run. And I kind of want to go back to that run because there's a lot of things that happened in those days that I didn't really understand, but the book kind of put in a different perspective. So things were weird around UFC 40. The UFC was not where they're at today, and you pretty much came in with Tito and gave them their biggest event ever at the time. You had signed, if I'm not mistaken, you signed a 3-fight contract with the UFC, correct?
Yes.
And that fight was... No, sorry.
Yeah, it was supposed to be, and again, I don't remember all the details on it. There's some stuff that happened legally, so I really don't even have a clear understanding how it all kind of came unraveled. But yeah, it was really about me going back in there, and I had knee issues, and I was supposed to be getting surgery, and Dana came to me and said, "We can't wait. We really need this to happen." And so I basically went in there with knee problems, and I knew, like I said, going in, it even says in the book, I knew I was an uphill battle, but I didn't want to admit it. I didn't want my mind to accept that I wasn't capable of winning. And so, I went in there with the full intention of winning, of being able to win. And, obviously you look back on it and, after everything already happens, you always have a better understanding of what you could have or you should have done. But at the time, man, I just felt like, here was this organization that I helped create along with a lot of other guys, and it was my legacy. And I just didn't want to see it fold up and go away. And that's kind of what I felt Dana White was saying to me, was like, they're not doing very good buys, and that, they're struggling and they need somebody to do this. And I told him, I said, well, I can guarantee you, I can get the numbers up. I've done it everywhere I've gone, every place. I've always been able to build the hype and be able to get the numbers in. So I can do it. And of course, Dana's come back and said, well, we've had a lot of people try and nobody's done it. And I said, I can do it. I'll build it up over 100,000 buys. And he's like, oh, dude, we haven't had that. And I said, I'm telling you, I can do it. And I did. After the first one, we developed close to 150,000 buys. And of course, then I was told at the time that we only did 99,000, and you were there on that.
Well, that's what I was going to get to, because your original contract, you had it so where you were getting X amount of dollars for every buy over 100,000 buys.
Yeah, I didn't get that. Unfortunately, that's where me and Dana White's issues came in. Before that, we got along fine, but that kind of started it.
Now, was that for the Tito fight? Did you notice that happening for the Tito fight, or was that after the chemo fight?
No, that was after later on. I couldn't tell you exactly when it was, but it all was around the same time that we were also doing the IFL, and there was issues there because I wanted to be a coach. But I had also had found out that I wasn't told the true numbers with the UFC at the time. They said we did 99,000. Of course, we all know now there was up closer to 150. I never got paid for that, for the numbers that we agreed on in the contract, for the original contract that we had signed. After we had did that one, they wanted to sign me to a multi-fight thing. When we signed that, it negated the original contract that we had for the amount over the 100,000 buys. So they were good about hiding that by signing me to a multi-fight deal after the first one with Tito.
Is that where the Rich...
Again, like I said, that was a long time ago.
And that's where the Rich Franklin fight came in, because they had not put your fight on TV, on pay-per-view, and it was done in like a kind of a way where they were just going to announce it like last minute in a way to kind of like hurt your drawing power for your renegotiations, I remember.
Yeah, I don't know all that stuff. Like I said, it's way beyond my pay grade, but, for me it was... just trying to get back out there and start fighting. I was basically rebuilding my life up again and doing all the right things. Got married to a wonderful woman with Tanya, and just trying to rebuild myself back into a normal lifestyle and get things going in the right direction. And we were doing that, but obviously the body was failing. Mentally, I was still ready to go. Mentally, I always believed I could find a way to win, but my body just wasn't keeping up with my mind. And so, there's a lot of things during that time where you look at it, I think I was blessed and very fortunate to be able to have the career that I had and to keep fighting as long as I did, and to be a part, even as my body was failing, even as I wasn't at the best of my abilities, I was still a main part of building multiple organizations even beyond the UFC. And so for me, having the body fail and not being as good as I was, but yet being an integral part of building so many different companies and businesses along the way, it was just truly amazing.
Now, after the Tito fight, the UFC had put you on, I don't remember if it was one or two events, but they had you as a commentator. Why didn't that not work out? You were very good at it. There was always rumors that Joe Rogan didn't want you in that role.
Yeah, that's what it was. And it wasn't Joe Rogan. It was that I asked Dana White that, I'd like to be the main color commentator. And at that time, they were just starting to work with Joe Rogan. And he was doing very well. But I had put my name into the hat so that I could have a shot at that. And, of course, Dana and Joe Rogan already had built a relationship in that sense. And so I never really got a shot at it. But, again, that's not a big deal anyways, because for me, after, I don't know, must have been a year or two after that, I had opportunities to do the announcing and other things. And I felt, and I'm glad it didn't. I think it worked out for the best because I wouldn't have been happy there because my mind and my thought process was to always to try to be better every day. Like always try to reach the sky, try to be better and keep trying, and not being kind of settle for just what you got. I always strive to do better. And so I felt like if I would have gotten that and I would have gotten that role in the UFC as the commentator, I do not believe I would have been happy in that role because it would have restricted me from being able to go out there and do other things in the world like I am now, where I've got multiple things that I've got my hands in and that I'm excited about doing and that I'm able to do. But I wouldn't have been able to do if I'd have been under contract with the UFC as an announcer. I'd have been stuck in one role.
No, they were trying to retire you. I remember it was kind of a surreal moment. I was sitting with your family next to Bob Shamrock, and Dana came in before the Rich Franklin fight and gave you a watch. And Bob was ready to kill him because he goes, he's not ready to retire, but why is he giving him his retirement watch? And this was after this was before the Rich Franklin fight. So they had tried to retire you from, all the way back then.
Yeah, and it was for me, I was just at a point to where I had gotten everything squared away and I was starting to put my body back together. And I really wanted to try to make a real good run at doing something in the MMA world, and it felt like the UFC was done with me, even though I was still putting in the biggest numbers that anybody else was doing, that I was still a huge draw, but yet they just, whatever reason, just didn't want me to continue to keep doing fighting, and I don't, and it's almost like they were trying to almost like not let me go do it anywhere else either. Like they were afraid that if I went somewhere else that I would also do those numbers again. So they were trying to retire me so that I wouldn't go anywhere else. And I just wasn't done yet, man. I know a lot of people say, well, you're long in the tooth, you weren't as good as you were. But I also in the back of my mind feel, and I truly believe this, that I earned the right to fight for fun. I fought competitively. I fought for organizations. I helped build them up. I was the spokesperson. I was the face for them. I did everything I was supposed to do to make other people money. And now I had a chance in that particular time in my life where I wanted to go out there and just fight because I enjoyed it. And no other reason, just to go in there and challenge myself and get into training, even though I was 40-something years old and into my 50s. I enjoyed fighting. I enjoyed competing, and to have that taken away from me was, in my opinion, was wrong because I wasn't ready to stop. I wanted to keep challenging and do it for fun, and it felt like they were forcing me out. And I get it when fighters get older, and if they truly do love what they do, I'm not saying they're doing it for the money or any of that, but if they truly love what they do and they truly go into the gym and they love competing and they train the best they can with all the injuries they have and challenge themselves going into the ring to fight, why wouldn't you allow that to happen? Why is it so important for fans to force people out because they're afraid they might get hurt or they're afraid they won't look the same? But yet the person that's fighting understands their heart and their love and their desire is to be in that ring, is to fight until they can't fight no more. If that is their desire, haven't they earned that?
Oh, God, yeah. But things got really ugly really quick. So I was at your house, and I got a phone call from the late Ryan Bennett. And Ryan says, Larry, Ken just signed with the UFC to do the reality show. And I said, that's impossible. Ken's literally taping his own reality show right here, right now. He's like, you should ask him. So I go up to you and I asked you, and you said, you put your fingers over your lips and you go, come upstairs. And I told you what I heard from him. And you're like, this is true. Don't say anything. I'm going to fight Tito again. I say, that's great. Then I got word from another reporter who's still in there, so I don't want to say who it was. And they said, look, the UFC is about to destroy Ken's legacy and you guys have no idea what's about to come. And the book details that in great detail as far as, you know.
And I didn't understand it, but I didn't understand that because in my contract, I was allowed to do both because I signed with the IFL because that was my team was going to fight in it, right? And that I would be coaching that team. And in my contract, I had that carved out that I could coach my fighters. But what happened was Dana, because of the issues he had with some of the guys that had come from the UFC into the IFL, he swore that he was going to destroy them. And so once he found out that I was going to be coaching and that I had my fighters fighting there, he came to me and told me that I couldn't do it. And I said, no, Dana, I can. I said, I have that carved out in my contract. We talked about this because my fighters need to fight. I have like 16 fighters and I need to be able to have these guys fight. And he said that, you know, that if I did, I wouldn't fight with them again. And I said, well, then Dana, sign my fighters, have them under a contract so they're fighting. Because if you don't, then I can't stop them from going in there and fighting. And if they're fighting, then I'm their coach. I want to make sure they do well. But you're telling me I can't coach them. And I said, but you won't sign them under a contract in the UFC. So what am I supposed to do? And he says, I don't care. He said, basically that if I fought, if I was to coach him, I wouldn't be fighting for the UFC again. And I said, Dana, we have a contract. He says, I don't care if we have a contract. I'm telling you, I'm going to destroy these guys. And if you coach for them, you will not be fighting for the UFC again. And I said, Dana, I have a contract. Why wouldn't you honor the contract? He says, I don't care about that contract. He says, I'm going to destroy them. And I just literally there was no recourse for me because I had all of my guys fighting. I had 10 guys that were fighting. And that, and Dana wouldn't put my fighters under a contract in the UFC, but I had to find places for them to fight. And this was a great way for our team to fight and have everybody fight, and I could coach them. But Dana wouldn't allow that to happen, and I did it anyways. And that's where the lawsuit and everything came in, because then Dana basically cut my contract, and I had a contract, and I had that carved out in my contract. And yet, hometown favorite in Vegas, you're not going to win a court case there against the UFC because they back a lot of the politicians and fund a lot of their campaigns. And so there was no way we were going to win that. But I just had to make sure that they knew that I was affected to push me around because what they did was wrong. And what I had a contract, I was in the right. In that my guys were going to be able to fight, and I was going to be there to coach them.
Was this before? I can't remember the timeline. Was this before or after you fought Tito the second and third time?
Oh, I couldn't tell you. That's so long ago, man. I can't put all the pieces together. But I do know that it was during those times because I was a little bit disappointed on how all that was handled and how easily mine and Dana White's relationship was destroyed. Because then I also found out, not only on top of that, where he wouldn't honor my contract, and they basically just said, no, I don't care if you got a contract or not. I'm going to destroy these guys, and you can't do it, even though I had it carved out. I also found out around that same time that I was told about the 150,000 buys that they had done. And I remember Dana telling me they did 99,000, and I was like, "That's not Dana would. There's no way they would say that to me. We did great."
No, they were putting that out in the media at the time. They were putting it out in the media that they were doing 150, and then they were telling you 99 at the same time, like you weren't going to read the internet.
Yeah, but I just thought that there's you can't believe everything you hear on the media either. So I let that slide for a while until I found out something a little bit more solid. And then when I did, I was I was definitely that was the deciding nail in the coffin for me. Whereas when things started getting really bad, was that here I had helped save this company and Tito too, and along with a lot of other people, and built up those numbers. Each fight we got bigger and bigger. So we did almost 1 million buys on our last one, and then the TV did the biggest numbers ever. Beating out baseball playoffs. So the numbers were there, and then to have something like that where they didn't tell me the truth on that, man, that hurt.
Now, from my standpoint, I had noticed they went from hot to cold very quickly. It was somewhere after the chemo fight when you brought in Jeremy Lappin, who became very big as far as a promoter later on. But he had just gone to war with Dana over Randy Couture. And I remember you commenting to me saying something to the effect of, that's why I hired him. And so how much of it, like, can you take us a little bit back as far as when you hired him, how things changed with Dana? Because I saw the UFC went from hot to cold with all of us immediately as soon as you made that determination.
Yeah, but I believe it was already started. I think that the seed was already there when Lappin came in. But again, it's just like I did with pro wrestling when I brought in somebody that obviously Vince didn't like very much because he represented Hogan, who now represents
Barry Bloom.
What's that?
Was it Barry Bloom?
Barry Bloom, yeah. So I do that because I realize that those guys aren't afraid to do what's right, no matter who the company is. They're going to step up and fight for what's right. And so that's the reason why I made those decisions with those two different agents, was because, I know who I am, and I know sooner or later I'm going to want them to stand up for what I believe is right and that they believe is right, even though they know they're fighting a losing battle. They're still going to do it. And so that's the reason why I made decisions with Lappin and Bloom, was that I realized that in the businesses that we're in, not everybody's going to always agree, and you got to have somebody that's going to be in your corner that is going to go ahead and do the right thing. And so I think when Lappin came in, I also believed that was a signal of, that I was going to be represented, and that, we were going to try to do things the right way. And we did. And as far as I'm concerned, everything we did was always above board, and it was the right thing to do.
Now, he was running a federation at the time called the WFA, and I'll never forget, it was surreal. You were still under contract with the UFC, but you were sitting next to him and Randy Couture at their pay-per-view. And the UFC office was freaked out about that, and they couldn't do anything about it.
When was that one? What was that one?
It was the WFA
pay-per-view. When they tried to escort him out?
No.
When they escorted him out?
No. You were sitting ringside, and they were showing you on TV the whole time, and they were having, they were not happy about that. But actually, I can't remember which Tito fight it was, but it was after one of the fights. They told everyone to go one place, and they told your camp to go somewhere else because they didn't want you going to the press conference. It was weird.
Yeah. Yeah, well,
and you almost walked in the press conference. All right, so now your UFC lawsuit got really, really ugly. I mean, Dana had made comments pretty much that he was going after you and your family. He wanted to bankrupt you as far as for legal fees. How did things get so bitter with you guys?
Again, like I said, I think that when I realized that those numbers after helping the UFC get to where they needed to be, because they were dying. I mean, they were literally hurting really bad. And I told them that I could do it, and I did it. And then to have them come back and tell me that they only did 99,000 buys when we did 150, that hurt, man. I mean, that to me, they're not where they're at now today. If I don't come in and do those things, me and Tito, we don't come in and we put the fight on and have the rivalry that we have, they're not putting that kind of money in their bank account, and to have that kind of stuff happen where, you're basically, I was lied to about the numbers because they didn't want to pay me a measly, a certain amount of money, over $100,000. And I just,
And at that,
it hurt. That hurt, and it still hurts today.
and at that point, it was a point of no return for you with them.
Yes, because I literally put that thing. I mean, along with Tito being in there, obviously, but we basically put that company on our shoulders, and that we did so much for them to be where they're at today, and then to be slapped in the face like that and not be regarded as anything important, and basically, kicked to the curb. I mean, with the way that they tell us we did 199,000 buys and we did 150, he looked right in the eyes and told me that. And that was just that. I mean, even though we're past all that and that, we're moving on and, bygones be bygones, but I mean, that's something that will always be a scar, right? I mean, it was just hard for me to deal with that.
Now, in the book, it was mentioned that you had a similar situation happen to you after you left the WWF.
Yeah, not anything like that, though, because when I went into the WWF, that was business. I mean, I knew there was nothing personal with Vince. Vince was a businessman, and that, everything, you treat it like a business. And if you don't, then you get punished, and I did. And I liked JR. JR was straightforward with me. He was a good person. He was a good role model. And he held me accountable. And so I really did like that. And even Vince, a lot of people didn't like Vince, but I thought Vince was, a straight up guy. Business was first. And that was one thing in his mind, was like, he never made qualms about it, man. His business was first. Friendship was a far second. So that's the way I took it when I went in. So I never really got close to anybody other than some of the wrestlers. So I never set myself up for a huge disappointment.
Now the book talks a little bit about fixed fights. Are there any fights in particular you'd want to talk about?
Well, first of all, fixed fights, there's a difference between being fixed fights and actually making fights exciting. So for me, in the UFC, that never happened, ever happened. Fights were legit. In the Pancrase, other things, there was just two times that I didn't like the outcome, and that I was asked because of certain situations, me being, beaten by Hoist one time, and then me going to fight Hoist another time, and then me still fighting in the UFC, and them not wanting us to risk me as a champion losing. So I was asked to do something two different times, and it didn't appreciate it either the second time, because that's what we were getting away from. But as far as, helping other guys build their reputation, asking for fights to go a little bit longer, yeah, of course. I mean, it was a new organization, and that to me is much, much different than asking you to do something where you're not able to go out there and do your best. I was able to go out there and do my very best, be able to go out there and fight guys. But there were times where even on my own, that I would grab a guy and I would allow him to move, even without being told, just because I knew them and they're from the States and I had to work with them. But I would never let them win. Absolutely not. But I wouldn't go in there and break their arm or, choke them unconscious in 30 seconds. I would roll with them. I would give them some time in there, and then I'd beat them. So I think it was a much, much different time at that, where nobody really had the understanding or the ability to do what we were doing and to go in there and hurt them, or to put a bad beating on them. You discourage them, never come back again. So obviously there were times in there then you go ahead and finish them. So, but no, the organization was predominantly built on shoot. It was a straight up shoot. But again,
well, predominantly means that there were some that were not.
Well, and I'm talking about me I'm
not asking you to rat anyone out. I'm just curious as a fan.
No, but they couldn't beat me, right? And I was the champion, and I lost to Hoist. And so their Pancrase championship, they felt, was at risk. And so they, there were some things that were talked about and asked. I'm not going to get into details that I didn't appreciate, but it only happened twice. And then I told them never again. And those are things that, even to this day, I don't like it, but it is what it is, man. But the Pancrase organization was built, and Funaki and Suzuki built it on the shoot.
What about
real
Pride?
Shooting and real fights. Pride, too, the same thing. Pride was built on real shoots, but at the same time, they were the same as Pancrase, where they come across different situations. Depending on what was happening, they would ask a guy to carry somebody for a little while.
Well, that's sort of my question. Did any of that happen with your fight with Sakuraba? Because it had a weird ending.
No, they stole that from me. They literally took that from me. I didn't understand why they stopped it. Sakuraba says he hit me hard and he thought it was a good stoppage, and I laughed, man. I'm like, are you serious? I was like, you hit me in the back of the head. I was backing up. I slipped through the ropes, and the referee stopped. Compared to the fights you've had before that he's let go forever, and yet you stopped mine on a dime. I mean, that was a setup. They didn't want me to go at it. They did not want me to have a shot at Sakuraba because, I don't think he was at his best, and neither was I. But they never gave me an opportunity to fight him. They just stopped the fight, and I thought that was a horrible stoppage.
Now, and then later on, you tested positive for steroids. What would you like to? I don't know how I even ask you this question, but I mean, how prevalent were steroids in mixed martial arts?
Well, again, like I said, people have to pull their heads out of the sand and make their own thoughts on it, because I'm not going to go and basically say anything about what the industry was like at the time. But it was what it was,
and it's changed.
But for me, it was really as I had gotten older, and those were the times where I'd actually tested, was because I had never. First of all, here I was trying to figure out. It was supposed to be testing, right? So, and I'm not going to mention names, but I go into my first one, and I'm down to 200, 199 pounds, and I'm fighting at 205. I never cut weight before. And all of a sudden, my opponent is cut down to 205 or 206. And then the next night, he's up to 220, 225. And I'm sitting there at 200 pounds. And I'm like, how in the world do you do that? Like, and the world had changed so fast on me because I had been out of it for a while. I was over in Japan, fought there 3 fights, then went back to the UFC and going to fight there and make my debut. And all of a sudden, I seen they were testing, and so I said, okay, I'm gonna not do that. So I go in there and I'm clean, and yet I seen everything around me wasn't legit, and I just like, oh, okay, so nothing's changed. They just say they're testing, but somehow or another they're hiding it. So obviously, guys started doing things during that league thing. So for me, it was more about, I would never walk into that arena, especially when I was younger. I would never walk into a ring being on anything. Now, if I was doing that prior to 3-4 months prior to stepping in there and fighting, what we call off season, trying to put 5 pounds on or 10 pounds on for when you actually step in the ring and you got natural muscle, that's the way I did things. I didn't walk in there being on anything. And as I got older, when I started testing, 2 different times where I got actually busted for that, I had actually thought that it was not testing. In fact, it's the one where I was doing it for another company besides the UFC. I believe it was in, I don't remember where it was at, but I was fighting a guy that was 390 pounds,
I remember that fight.
Foot. And they told me I had to be 225 pounds to fight him. I weighed 212 pounds at the time, I think. And they told me I had to weigh that. And I was like, so I can't put the weight on. Like, I'm training. I didn't have time to put the weight on. They gave me 3 weeks to do it. I'm like, I can't put the weight on. so basically I took a shortcut, put the weight on. I think I went up to 220, something like 222, something like that. They allowed me to fight a guy that was 300 and I think it was 90. I'm not exactly the weight, but 390, 7 foot, and I weighed 220, and I beat him. And then I came back and tested positive. So I was like, yeah, guilty. I was guilty. Sorry. And then the one with Royce Gracie, which was in Texas. I was on a TRT program, and even today, that's what I do. The TRT program. It's a minimal amount for the health reasons. And so here I was on this thinking they didn't test in Texas. They never tested, right, for this. So I just stayed on. Like my medical doctors as well. If you can just stay on, just stay on. And so 3 weeks going into it, I find out they're going to test, and so I go, okay, I got to stop. I mean, they're going to test. I got to stop. So probably about 2.5, 3 weeks out, I stopped. And I know for sure it's going to be difficult for it not to come up, but I'm not going to do the fight, you know. So I go in there and I do the fight, and then it comes up positive. And I kind of thought I had an idea it might. But again, like I said, it was the TRT thing, and it was more for, you know, I mean, obviously you're not going to get any gains out of doing what we were doing and how we were doing it when you're getting it from the doctor. It's very minimal, but yet it still showed up. And also too with the pain management, also that showed up there too, because again, 3 weeks out, I didn't know that they were going to be testing. And so then when I tried to take the alternative medicine, it just didn't give me enough time for that to happen. So those are the reasons why those things happen, and they're just reasons. Either way, it's still what it was. You can't change that. I tested, and that's just the way it is.
So this next line of questioning is a little awkward for me. I met you through your wife, who's a very God-fearing, nice, nothing but nice things to say about your wife, Tanya. And I was completely shocked when I'm reading the book that, oh yeah, by the time when I was starting to do your website, you were one of the largest ecstasy dealers. I mean, can you square that up with us?
Yeah, that wasn't during the time me and Tanya were together.
But it was right before that.
Yes, right just before, and I had been just getting out of that, where, you know, I had gotten involved with strip clubs. I'd gotten involved with girls, and a good friend of mine, Bullet, was the marketing director for several of the strip clubs in LA and also San Diego. We hung out real close, and a lot of parties used to go on at my house. And so basically I was, you know, supplying the ecstasy because it's something that I enjoyed. It helped me kind of check out of the reality where going through the divorce, going through the separation with my kids, you know, just all the stuff that I was dealing with at that time. It felt like a way out, and obviously, you know, it's not, because you always got to come back to reality, and then it's even worse after that. So, but that's how it really started. Was I just started buying quantities of it, and then pretty soon I was just giving it to people, and then sooner, you know, somebody would show up at the house, and you know, pretty soon I'm like, no, I'm not just gonna give them away. So people started buying them, and next thing you know, man, I'm loaded with this stuff, and it's, you know, it's not like I said, hey, I'm gonna be an addict, I'm gonna just start. No, it just kind of, by using it and buying quantities of it, and next thing I know, people are buying them from me, and you know, now I'm doing 30,000 or 50,000 of these things, and yeah, so it was, like I said, it was a bad time. Stupidity, man. If I had ever gotten caught, man, my life would never been the same. And so I made a decision, right before I start doing something with Tanya, and made the decision that I'm done with this. I can't do this anymore. I can't be running around and living my life and burning the candle at both ends, and trying to be a father, and trying to be a fighter, and trying to run these gyms, and doing all these things, and living this second life. And so I just said, I'm done. I literally just stopped. And probably about 2 months after I did that is when me and my wife Tanya had gotten together, and she was able to. When we had gotten together, I thought it was perfect timing. I thought that God works in mysterious ways, because it was perfect timing for me, because I had already committed to changing my life. And here it was, you put this woman in front of me who had always been a part of my life, always been a part of the family, had just gone through her own separation. Next thing you know, we're together, and we kept each other moving in the right direction and holding each other accountable and doing the right things, which ends up leading me into where I'm at today, being able to have the opportunities that I have today after going through so much that could have destroyed me at any time. And yet here I am, with all kinds of opportunities and blessings that I'm living with. And my kids, I have a great relationship with my kids, which is a blessing because of some of the things that we had gone through earlier on and how upset they were. So to be able to have that, man, I am truly blessed.
Now, this was going on during around, it's from the timeline you gave, it sounded like this was going on around when you fought Don Fry and when you fought Tito Ortiz the first time. Is that an accurate timeline of?
Yeah, the second, third time, I think, yeah. I think, yes, around those times. But here's the thing. I think that when you read the book, it almost seems like it was 24/7, like it was constant, And the thing is it wasn't. It was more of like when fights happen, the parties would happen, or during the break of me not fighting and not training, and I would go out and do those things. But it wasn't like I did it for a year straight and I was just out party as a party animal. No, it was weekends and it was special times, and I would definitely cut loose. I would tear it up. But when me and my wife Tanya had gotten together, that all stopped. Like it was, even today, she's my best friend. I mean, I don't go out and have drinks with my friends because she's my friend. She's everything. And in my family, we spend time. We just went to a lake house 2 weekends ago and spent time with family and enjoyed the lake house. And so that's what really changed me around, was really being able to understand the difference between having the free time and going out and having fun. And it's like, I don't need that party and that drinking and those kinds of friends to enjoy life. When I have got my wife as my best friend, I got my kids as my buddies and traveling around with and playing games and doing different things with, and it doesn't include drugs or alcohol. And so, I've been able to build a really strong life and a really strong opportunity to live a beautiful and happy ending.
Now, was Dana White in the UFC and people in the MMA industry, were they aware of your double life at the time?
No way. I mean, I think they knew the intensity that I had and the anger and the frustration it would come out. But yeah, I think I did. I think I hit it well. And then the reason why that was because I was able to, and I think you see it in the book, being able to do what I did, even in that kind of a lifestyle. You got to be able to categorize your training. You got to be able to categorize when it's time to train and to go hard. And then, when you're done with that, then being able to go out and have fun with the friends that I had at the time, and be able to just light it. I mean, I lived everything full speed. Whether it was training, I would go hard. And whether it was partying, I would go hard. It was almost like everything I did to its maximum. And I guess that's bad in some ways, but, it made me the champion that I am, because I never did anything halfway, even in training. I always trained hard.
Your
intensity, and I know a lot of guys complained about that. A lot of guys complained about how I trained. He beat us up. He's always hurting people. He's doing this. He's doing that. But yet I did the same thing to myself. That's the way I did it. I trained hard. It was bare-knuckle, no holds barred. There was no way to train in that. And so we just did it.
So, I mean, do you now training now? I mean, your first book, it was a whole thing about having to do like 500 squats. I mean, do you still? I mean, what would your workout routine be like right now?
Well, if you look at me now, I'm in great shape.
Yes, you are.
I mean, I've always worked out, and I'm going to continue to do that. It's a lifestyle. So the things I do now, I mean, people would even say I'm nuts now. You look at what I do in the pro wrestling when I do suicide dives over the top rope, hurricanranas, and people are like, dude, you're crazy, man. And it's like, hey, I don't do anything halfway. I get chair shots to the head. I take trash cans. I get people stomping on me. I whacked over the back with the chair, and I tell them, do whatever you do, it better not be light, because if I don't feel it, I'm not selling it. So that's who I am. I mean, it's not like when you read the book and guys start complaining about me beating them up and coming in and getting pissed off and wanting to hurt them, and that I come in one day and I may be mad and I'll go in and beat somebody up, and one day I come in and maybe nice. No, I was that way the whole time. Anybody tells you anything different does not know me. I train with intensity every single time I get on the mat. Every single time that I go to the gym, it's intensity with hard work. And to say that I would be coming in a bad mood and I would be more aggressive on somebody is a lie, because I did that the whole time. There was no bad mood or good mood. When I stepped on the mat, I was in a bad mood all the time.
Now you would, my friend Vernon White is all over the book, and he sort of came off a little bit as an angel while he was telling some of your stories, and I'm just kind of curious, was Vernon an angel in his younger days?
See, you know him as well as I do, and Vernon White was no angel. Everything he said I did, I'm did
sorry,
right along
Vernon.
with me, so yeah.
I'm sorry, Vernon, I had to ask.
Vernon White was no angel. He was no angel. Everything he did, he did right alongside with me. So if he wants to point the finger at me, that's fine. But the fingers are being pointed right back at it because he was right there with me.
When the book came out, I sent him a text, and I said, I missed out on all the fun. And he goes, you should just be thankful you have the brain cells that we don't have.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, like let's just kind of your relationships. I mean, do you have a relationship now at all with Dana White, or are you guys still?
No, we were able to at least get on a phone call and talk. I mean, obviously, like I said, it's something that I'll always. I mean, I won't hold a grudge, but it hurt. That hurt me to know that he looked right at me and told me they did 100,000 buys or 99,000 buys. That hurt. That really did, and that's something that will always be there every time that his name is brought up or that we're talking or something. It will always. And it's not in the way that I'm angry at him or that I hate him for it or anything like that. But it hurt. It hurt me.
Well, the thing that hurts
to know that.
I was going to say, the thing that hurts me as someone that got to know you and your family is and I'm going to be careful with how I say this, but was Frank Shamrock. And I remember at the at the funeral for Bob, Frank was, and he discusses it in the book, but he was not exactly there for the family. Whereas we were all very impressed that you and Dana were in a war at the time, and Dana called you at the funeral, and I mean, he was more of a than Frank was at the time. I mean, supportive. I don't know what the right word is.
Yeah, I think Frank, in his own way, he couldn't show up because of everything that had gone on between him and my dad and me and the den. And I felt he felt like there was just a lot of pressure. But at the same time, it doesn't make it right. I mean, no matter what it is or what happened, he should have gave my dad the right to be able to put aside any of the differences that him and my dad had because he was dying. And my dad asked to, talk with him. And he didn't give him that opportunity. And so in the book, he's made to look like, this and that. And I understand what he was saying in the book about not showing up. And I understand that. But what about my dad? What about him asking so that he's able to go be at peace because he's dying and that he wasn't given that opportunity because of your issues that you had?
Now, what is your relationship with Frank? I know you guys had tried to mend the fences.
Yeah, I think we're in limbo. I think it's hard because, we're not blood brothers. And We never really grew up with one another. So it's hard because I think in his mind he feels, and I've even read it in the book, he feels like that I was jealous of him and that I didn't want him to succeed and
I
that,
think it was the other way around.
I wanted to hurt him. And I can't, that's another thing that hurts me to think that I don't want my guys to be better than me. I just don't understand that. It's like you want your floor to be. My floor would be absolutely something that I would want them to surpass. So, for instance, if Frank was to come in and I trained him like I did, I want my floor to obviously go all the way up to the ceiling and then for him to step on my ceiling for his floor and then go higher with it, because the only way a trainer can have his legacy live on is by the students that he trains. They have to be able to increase it and get better as time goes on to carry that legacy on farther. They have to get better. They have to make big strides and be able to carry the legacy even farther than you could. Because otherwise your legacy will die where it sits because it's not advancing. It's not getting better. So for me, I didn't understand how people were talking, some people in there that were talking about how I didn't want them to succeed. But yet I was spending $30,000 a month on a gym, on a fighter's house, on food for them to live in and train. And I brought in training partners. I brought in trainers so that they could get better while I was still pro wrestling. But yet I didn't want them to succeed. How does that make sense?
I think some of them were always a little bit jealous of your notoriety, and that had sort of played into it a little bit, and they were all scared of you.
Yeah, and again, some of the things that were hurtful was just some of the things that were said like that. When, in my heart, man, I wanted the Lions Den to just blow everything out of the water. I wanted it to be it. I wanted it to be the best team in the world, and it was. And the training that I had put those guys through wasn't for my satisfaction of watching them suffer. It was for the fact is I wanted them to be the best and be able to walk into a ring and fear nothing. And the guys that got it, like Guy Mesger and Jerry Bolender, and some of the other guys who would basically tell you, listen, Ken was the only one that could motivate. He could motivate anybody to move a mountain. And that the training that we did was to, whenever we stepped into the cage, that whoever we were facing, man, it was nothing what we hadn't already faced. And so they got it. They understood it. But some of them, it was almost like they were disgruntled, like they were angry that their lives hadn't turned out the way they wanted it to, and they were mad where they had ended up. But that's not my fault. I mean, I gave them every opportunity to succeed. I trained them. I gave them a place to live. I put food on the table for them. They had everything they needed with coaches, and they still couldn't succeed. That's not my fault. That's their fault, because they were given every opportunity to do that. And a lot of them that were saying those kind of things about me are the ones that had left, that ran away, that couldn't take the heat. And so they end up leaving. So unfortunately, that's something that I can't control. Obviously, they deserve a right to be able to say what they want in the book because they were part of the Lions Den. They did pass the tryouts. But anybody that is saying those things, I ask anybody to look and see whether or not those guys were the ones that stuck around or were they were the ones that had left and ran away. Then it would give you a better picture of why they're saying what they're saying.
Now, you were on Mike Tyson's podcast within the last few months, and he's been making a lot of news recently about possibly doing an exhibition fight. You would have called him out when he was doing the WWF at the time. Would you be interested in fighting Mike Tyson?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Mike Tyson, he's the baddest man, and I'm the world's most dangerous man. You put those two together, especially in a boxing exhibition, it would be, obviously, Mike Tyson, I respect him. In my opinion, is the baddest man ever to walk into a boxing ring. I truly believe that. He was intimidating. I modeled my game after him. I mean, I beat guys before I ever got in a ring because I watched how he would walk the ring and how he would walk guys down, and I did the same thing. So I have the highest respect for him. And so, absolutely, if I had the opportunity again, it's something that I keep telling people over and over again. I am a fighter at heart. It will never go away. As much as people want to say, man, you should retire. You don't do this. I am always going to be competitive. I am always going to have the mentality to want to fight. Doing it is another thing, obviously, but I will always have that because I'm not somebody that did it for a living, not somebody that did it for a paycheck. I'm not somebody that did it for just a career. I did it because it was in my DNA and it's who I am.
Now, you reinvented yourself again. You came up with a bare-knuckle league called Valor, and you guys put on a really successful show last year, and you're going to make a comeback with it. But could you tell us just a little bit about how you got involved with bare-knuckle boxing and what you think the future is for that new sport?
Yeah, bare-knuckle is something that I had always, even in the beginning days when I was fighting and I was taking guys down, I was submitting them, and it was bare-knuckle. No holds barred in the UFC when it first came out over in Pancras. It was open hand strikes with no gloves on. And there was just something pure about that kind of fighting. It was real. It was raw. It was no excuses. And I fell in love with that. And then as time went on, we started seeing gloves getting put on and being told it was safer. And obviously with the medical science that we have now, we know that that's just not true. That bare knuckle is definitely a lot more harder to compete in and not break your hand and be able to not throw as hard and have to be more accurate with your strikes and so much more to the professionalism of striking.
How would you compare bare knuckle boxing to boxing?
Oh, I would say fast. Bare knuckle is fast. It's pure. Every punch counts. Like in boxing, you see a guy throw 7 jabs and a right hand, and and they get through the first round, and there's nothing. You can't tell that any punches had landed. In bare knuckle, if you throw 7 jabs and a right hand, you're going to see bruising, you're going to see cuts, and possibly blood, and maybe even a knockout. So it's fast. The punches that you throw, they're very important. Jabs can knock you out. Right hands, left hooks, uppercuts, all of them can knock you out. And so the punches and the actual fight itself is so much faster because of the effectiveness of the actual punches that you're throwing. And they actually do more damage with the bare knuckle when you talk about the skin and you talk about the bruising and stuff like that. But at the same time, you don't have as much damage to the brain because you're not throwing 100 punches because the jab doesn't cut them or doesn't bruise them, or the right hand, they have a tough skull and they won't go down from a right hand. So now you're able to throw 100 to 200 punches per round and hit them in the head, and that brain, doesn't matter what the hard surface is on the outside, it just matters that brain was bounced off inside of your head 100 to 200 times per round for 12 rounds, as opposed to bare knuckle where you're doing 3 to 5 rounds and every single punch will count because you're going to bruise or cut or you're going to get knocked down. So you're not going to take as many punches. So therefore, bare knuckle is much more fast and competitive every round for 3 to 5 rounds than what boxing is for 12 rounds.
Now you had Aisha Smith, who was a famous boxer on your last card. Is that sort of what you're looking to do with Valor, to bring in former fighters, former UFC fighters, former boxers, and have them fight against each other?
No, actually what we're doing is we're trying to find the best strikers, whether they're in MMA or whether they're in boxing. We want the best strikers in the world, guys that we know that have legitimate skill sets to be able to go in and put somebody down. We want the toughest guys, not the toughest boxers. We want the toughest men in the world to fight in Valor. That's why we have the tournament, because we believe that brings out that tough character, guys that have no quit in them. You look at Mo, who went through a couple tough fights, but he kept coming. That's a tough individual. You got Godbeer, who came in and just shocked the world. LeVar Johnson, who gave you a taste of his power. A.C. Smith, who showed us how boxers should box in a bare-knuckle fighting arena. He showed you how to do that. It was exciting, and we really enjoyed it. We look forward to doing our next one. We're going to do our annual reunion that's going to be coming up here in September. I don't know if we'll do it in September or after, but we're going to be doing a reunion for Valor Bare-Knuckle here real soon, and we think that it is the future because it's fast. People want to see action, and when they see something thrown, they want to see action, they want to see effectiveness, and they want to see the punches count. And I think with Valor, that's what they're going to get.
Now, you were supposed to have a fight with James Toney, and you guys had a very loud pull-apart press conference, and then that fight never happened. Being this is a boxing show, I figured I would ask you about that particular fight.
Yeah, I don't know what happened to that. I know that Tony and myself had agreed on fighting. I thought we were moving forward with it, and then the bottom came out. So I don't know whose fault it was. I mean, I know Tony was definitely game. I know I was game, but I don't know what happened. So that's something you'd have to ask them because we just fell out. The bottom came out of it.
And you played basketball with Floyd Mayweather last year?
Yeah, we did a little charity thing that he was doing, and played a couple minutes in the game, and it was fun. I enjoyed it. Mayweather's a good guy. It was fun to play with some of the celebrities there, and it was an awesome time. I enjoyed it.
Did you and Floyd get to talk?
Yeah, absolutely. We talked behind before they were introducing us, and I remember he said, "Oh, you're that guy you're that bare-knuckle that UFC bare-knuckle guy." I said, "Yeah, that's me." Shamrock, right? Yeah, I know that's me. So
I remember when that came out.
Yeah, and but he's actually a pretty good basketball player himself.
And I mean, just to kind of finish up, did you keep in touch with, or do you have any kind of relationship now after all these years with like Tito Ortiz or Don Fry or some of your rivals?
Yeah, Don Fry and I are good friends. After the fight and stuff, we shook hands and we talked a few times after that. So we put that behind us, and so we're good, man. I think the world of him. I think he's a great guy. Tito Ortiz, same thing. We had our rivalry, man, and I was more frustrated at myself than him. I was more angry at me than him, even though it came out on him. But it was a frustration of me not being able to do what I wanted to do and be able to give him a fight and be able to build a rivalry. And I wasn't able to do that. So it was just frustrating for me, and it did come out on him. And I thought that he did well. I thought he was able to turn it around and turn it into something positive for selling tickets and creating that rivalry and keeping it going. So I thought we worked well together. And, so me and him are friends. We're good. I respect what he's done. In fact, in my opinion, I think at 205, he was probably, in my opinion, the toughest 205 ever. So, and I've seen a lot of guys, but I think he's legit.
Did you ever feel that it wasn't fair that you did fight Tito at 205, that you probably would have been much better fighting him at, say, 220?
Yeah, well, that's all hearsay. There's nothing I can do about it. That's where it was at. That's how they wanted it. That's how it was. And I stepped up to the challenge. And again, like I said, I did it because in my opinion, if I hadn't, Tito doesn't have a rivalry. He's already beaten everybody. Nobody's there, and they didn't know how to create an interest or build a fight. They just were going through the process. And so when I went in there, my idea was to build numbers and help save the company. And that's literally what I did. I mean, unfortunately, no one wants to give me credit for that, whatever the office is with the UFC and why they don't. But that's why I went back there. It wasn't for me to go back and try to be the world champion, even though that was in my mind. It was more about they had nobody. They were dying, and I came in there and told them, don't worry, I'll get the numbers. And then when I did, they were ecstatic. I got a hug from Dana White, just literally jumping out of his shoes saying, we did it. And then, you know, I was told we did 99,000 buys. That hurt. That really did. It's still to this day.
Now, I got to meet some really impressive guys with you, and one of them that I wanted to ask you about was Eric Paulsen. And when he was your trainer for the chemo fight, we've got a bunch of emails from people saying, I'd recognize that Paulsen knee anywhere when you knocked chemo out with that knee. Can you tell us a little bit about working with Eric?
Yeah, Eric's a really good dude, man. We were actually one of the first guys over in Japan. He was with a shoot organization, and I was with Pancrase. And we both, in our own right, had dominated our organizations. And I always looked up to that guy. I thought he was incredible when he was fighting, and never really crossed paths, you know. So for us to be able to cross paths that late, be able to pick his brain and have him train me and show me some things and put me in the right position to be able to win that fight, it's something I'll always remember, and I appreciate him for that.
Well, Ken, I got to tell you, it was really an honor to get the chance to talk to you again and stroll down memory lane, and I appreciate you taking over an hour of your time with me tonight.
No worries, man. I just want people to know that I got a new website out. It's KenShamrock.com. We just rebuilt it. It's got all my social media sites on there. It's got all the stuff that we're up and coming and doing, along with Valor. So, yeah, check it out if you get a chance. I would love to have you guys on board there and be able to keep up with things that we're doing now, which is a lot of stuff. So we look forward to seeing you guys on there. KenShamrock.com.
And like I said, I hope we can have you back on the show as closer to your next Valor event to discuss it.
Yeah, absolutely. We'd love to. And I think that boxing, that for us, we really think that this is the next step for boxers to be able to almost step into that tough guy world, because boxing's being, and even though I like boxing, but it's almost like it feels like it's not getting its recognition because they're wearing big old gloves now, and for what they're doing in the world of bare-knuckle fighting and also MMA with the smaller gloves. It's like they're almost like getting left behind, and I think this is an opportunity for boxers to step up and reclaim that badass image.
Well, if they do, they should definitely do it on Valor Bare-Knuckle. You guys put on a really good show last time.
Well, and also, too, our rules are boxing rules. We don't let guys grab behind the head and hit them while they're holding them, whereas a lot of the other organizations allow them to grab them and punch them in the clinch and hold their head. Dirty boxing. We're not.
You were involved with the rules, if I remember the promotional stuff that came out for the Bare-Knuckle. Could you tell us a little bit about how you came up with the rules?
Yeah, a good friend of mine, Todd Middendorf, who was a boxer and also a part of Lion's Den with Gary Bollinger, and he had did some boxing and so he knows some of the boxing commissions and also did MMA. And when I talked to him, I wanted the kicks and the knees, and he's like, "Dude, they ain't ready for that yet." And we kind of went round and round about it. And then as I started to see how difficult it was to even do bare-knuckle, I said, okay, we'll start out like this. And then when I actually saw the fights, I said, you know what? This might be a good spot to start at, because it's a lot easier to transition boxers and MMA guys into boxing rules than it is to allow them to hold each other and hold the head and punch and all those other things with clashing heads and stuff, keeping them apart and making sure that they're boxing and not banging heads and throwing uppercuts while they're holding somebody. It just doesn't look right. It's not real fighting. And so I thought by keeping it clean and holding to some of the rules that Todd had brought in, it was a lot easier transition for the commission to look at it and go, okay, we know these rules, and all we're doing is we're taking the gloves off. And so it was an easier transition for us to do that with the commission. And also for the guys coming in and fighting, I think it's a lot easier to understand what rules that we're trying to implement.
But do you see a commission like New Jersey, New York, California allowing bare knuckles, or are they going to be in smaller states?
No, I think that the more they see this thing actually happening, like we had with our Valor show, and start seeing guys getting knocked out, and yet they're still getting up, and there's not a whole lot of damage done. And then you're seeing guys get cut and they're bleeding, and it looks bad. But then as soon as the round is over, and that the fight's over, and they clean them up, and you see them after the fight is over, and you're like, oh, they're just bruised up, but there's no concussion, there's nothing bad, they don't have to go to the hospital. I think the more they see the results of what bare-knuckle is, I think the more they'll start being more comfortable, because it's not as dangerous as brain damage, as having somebody constantly getting hit for 12 rounds at 200 punches a round and then not being able to talk because they're slurring their words. Well, bare-knuckle, we don't have that because guys aren't getting hit that much.
So you're basically saying that they're not going to get the brain damage, they're just going to get more surface cut up, bruised, but not anything that's more longer lasting.
Right, it's something that heals in a week or 10 days, you know. They can fight again, right? But the more that they constantly keep taking that brain damage, man, the worse it is, because I would much rather have cuts and scars than not be able to, remember my wife's name after 20 years of fighting.
I mean, that's definitely an interesting way of looking at it. And how is, like I said, how is the training? Like, how is the training for bare knuckles different than, say, training for a boxing fight, other than the gloves? The clinches are different.
I always tell people, well, it's how you train for it, right? You don't need power with bare knuckle, because if you land it with your knuckles, you're going to knock them down because you don't have any padding there. So what you do is you work with double in bags and speed bags on your speed and your accuracy, and you don't have to worry about the sparring. You don't have to worry about going in there and actually hitting someone, because all bare knuckle is being able to land your punch on a guy's chin or cheekbone or nose, and you're going to drop him. So it's all about speed, it's all about accuracy and conditioning.
Well, that's interesting. So you're saying that for the bare knuckle, that it's not like typical boxing where a lot of it's sparring based. This isn't going to be sparring based. This is going to be more bag based, even though you're going to end up in a fight.
Yeah, because listen, in a fight, whether it's a street fight or anything else, you got to be in conditioning, and two, you got to be able to throw a lot of combinations. The only way you do that is by sparring and getting your timing. Well, in bare knuckle, it's not about combinations. It's about landing a punch, not about one or two punches, and the guy's going to go down if you hit him on the chin. Because it's not a boxing glove where you got padding and the guy's got a tough chin and he keeps fighting. It's about that knuckle landing on a chin bone, and you will go down. You don't need 5 punches to put him down.
I mean, as someone who's been following boxing forever, watching the couple of bare knuckles I saw it was bloody. It was definitely very exciting to watch. It was definitely different than watching some of the snooze fest fights that we get to see sometimes. And like I said, it's really cool that you're a part of it.
The education on that is people, when they're watching it, is that when you're watching it, that you're not looking at it in a sense of like there's blood, there's cuts, and oh my gosh, this guy's getting killed. No, it's not, because if you're gonna get cut, you're gonna get bruised, you're gonna have those things. But that superficial stuff is the stuff you should be worried about: the blood, the cuts. It's the brain damage you should be worried about, and that's the only way you get that is by getting hit hundreds of times in the head, and your brain bounces off in the fluid inside of your head each fight. That, to me, is what you should be worried about, because that can kill you.
Well, I look forward to your next bare knuckle fight, and hopefully you have it one in New York City so we can all go to it. But I mean, now let me ask you this: the fights that are going to happen in the near future in boxing and in the UFC are in front of no fans. Would you be able to do that in Valor with just the pay-per-view buys, or are you going to wait for this whole pandemic to blow over before you would do that next Valor fight?
No, I think fighting is is something people want to see. And I think it's an interesting time when you're able to watch this, like with the UFC. It was so interesting to be able to hear the corners and to hear the fighters. It was very interesting that you were able to hear them communicate. And that was such a different dynamic. And I thought it was cool. And so, yeah, I think you could still do that with no fans in there because it's a different dynamic because now you hear the coaches coaching them and telling them what not to do, look out for this. And so, I think it's cool. And I think we can still do it.
But so you're basically saying is you feel that the pay-per-view buy rates would be able to offset the ticket money.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that people being able to get an inside look at what the coaches are saying, that's like being inside the gym watching people train. I mean, you get to hear the communication with the fighters while they're actually fighting in the ring and the coaches are yelling at it. Watch the left hook. You can't hear that when there's a crowd. And so to me, that is really interesting to see the dynamic between the coaches and the fighters while they're fighting.
Oh, at that last UFC, the one fighter changed his entire strategy because he heard the commentator criticizing him.
Yeah, but again, like I said, and the fans actually get to see that happen in real time. Like you hear a coach go, "Hey, watch the left hook," and the guy literally goes the other direction, and the fans are like, "Hey, he just told him that." So the audience is able to follow the coaching.
I said it's definitely a different dynamic. I mean, who knows how long this is going to last for? But these are definitely interesting times that we're living in.
Yeah, and also too, there's a lot more stuff you can do with it. Like you can also put on families, guys that are at one house, like they did at the Super Bowl, where they had people gathered around with somebody being drafted. Well, if there's a fighter in there fighting, why wouldn't you show his party at home? All the people there waiting for him to go in there and fight, and then actually show two boxes of the red corner and the blue corner, and you got the families at home having fun watching each of their fighters fight. One guy gets caught and knocked down, the crowd goes crazy, and then you can actually talk to people while they're fighting at the party. Hey, what do you think about your fighter? I mean, there's so many things that you can do with this and keep it interesting and keep you intrigued by using all these different opportunities through the social media sites.
Well, the Valor was definitely very popular on social media, and I mean, as is there's another the other Bare-Knuckle company. It definitely seems to be on an upswing, and like I said, there was a lot of hype about it because of the Mike Tyson announcement, which no one really believed is really going to happen. But it definitely got Bare-Knuckle a lot of notoriety in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think right now that's where everybody's living right now. So if that's where everybody's living, take advantage of it.
But I mean, like I said, since Mike Tyson did that video, Shannon Briggs, Evander Holyfield, and other retired boxers have all said, "Hey, I want to fight." Now they're talking about doing exhibition fights, but would there be an exhibition bare-knuckle fight? I mean, do you think that? I mean, with these fighters that are with huge names are looking to do stuff. I mean, is there something that maybe you could do with them, or fighting in these exhibitions might become the next thing next year? I mean, where do you see this all going?
Yeah, I don't think you can do an exhibition with bare-knuckle, but you can do an exhibition with boxing gloves. But bare-knuckle, you hit them with bare-knuckle, you're hitting them. I don't care if you pull back on it or not. You're still hitting them, and it don't feel good. But with gloves on, yeah, you could do an exhibition there.
And like you said earlier, I mean, obviously you would be interested, and you'd be a very interesting person to throw into the mix if you were to fight a Mike Tyson, a Evander Holyfield, or someone like that in an exhibition match. It would draw big numbers, obviously.
Absolutely, but obviously the exhibition match with bare knuckles is a little bit different. But nevertheless,
you are a promoter, so I had to ask. I know you. We know you would.
Yeah, I do it in a heartbeat. Yeah, for sure. And those guys, I'm sure, being the boxers and as good as they are, I'm sure that they would have no problem with it either. So it is what it is. But anything that we can do to help charities and be able to raise money for different funds and stuff like that for kids or people that are in need, I'm all about that. That's what I do for a living. I love fighting. I've always loved it. I don't do it for the money, although money's a part of it, but it's because I have the desire and the love to do it. So if it's for charity and it's going to help people out and help them become better people and have better opportunities, I'm there. I'm all in.
Well, you've always been, you're always charitable. You always kept a lot of this out of the media, but you're always speaking to church groups and at-risk youth, and you were always trying to inspire troubled kids, and you always kept that out of the media. But it was one of the things that you always did that was very fascinating and really just awesome to watch. From a people level, you were using your notoriety to help others and try to affect change.
Yeah, I think it's important. Obviously, I did a lot of things wrong in my career, no question. I did a lot of things right too. So with the opportunity after, getting things pulled back together again and being able to get going in the right direction, I felt like I wasted some years of being able to help people. And I think that we're all put on this earth to try to help one another become better people. And so I live my life like that. So I have the opportunity to help someone and have their lives become better because of something that I can say or do for them, then that's what I want to do.
That's all you can ever ask from somebody. Well, Ken, thank you so much again. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me tonight.
Yeah, hey, listen, I appreciate it. I look forward to many, many more interviews that I've got coming up. If you want to find out when those interviews are happening, you go to my website, KenShamrock.com. And be able to follow, because we're going to break this book down. We're going to be going over all kinds of stuff. And I got a podcast that's coming up. It's the Valor podcast, where we'll also be talking about fights and different things with Valor and things that are going on in the world. But also, too, we will be breaking down the Shamrock book on our podcast. So look forward to this, and look forward to the journey that we're going to have with this book and being able to talk about it, have people ask questions. So it's an exciting time for us, for Valor, and for our team. We're looking forward to being able to engage with the fans. It's going to be an exciting time in 2020. But first, please lift this lockdown.
Well, I want to just say that from a personal level, I appreciate the opportunity that you gave me to let me run your website many, many years ago and do some of the things that I was able to do because of my association with you back in the day. And it's almost surreal years later looking back on that. But I mean, I just wanted to thank you. You were always there as a friend for me and for some of the other people. And I got to see Ken as opposed to Ken Shamrock, the TV character. And you were always just, a fascinating, just unbelievable person.
Well, I appreciate that. And Larry, we enjoyed you too. So you did a lot of great things for us. So I thought we definitely helped each other out. It's good to be able to come full circle and talk and be able to hopefully work together again.
Oh, we would love to definitely do something with you again on Boxing Insider, but we can talk about that off the air.
Right on.
Well, anyway, Ken, thank you very much, and enjoy your night, and we will be in touch very soon, and we will have this podcast posted in the next 24 hours.
I appreciate you, Larry.
I appreciate you more. Thank you so much.
Right.
Bye.
Uh-huh.
Us today, and I gotta tell you, that was really thrilling for me on a personal level. I had spent so many really, really good times with Ken and his family over the last, it was 10 years ago. We all got old. But it was just really fascinating to have him on the show. He talked about, he was very open about, certain things, whether it was the drugs, whether it was the steroids, some of the fights, some of the stuff with Dana White. Clearly, he's upset about the 99,000 pay-per-view buys. But these are things that I'm asking him, that when I'm telling you, when I was running his website, I would have been petrified. I mean, in my mind, Ken doing ecstasy like this was not the guy that I saw. I saw he was with Tanya. She was God-fearing. She was she was straight-laced. She was great. And I saw Ken in I saw him in a different way. So like I said, when I read this book, I was shocked. And it's an amazing story, and he's really come full circle. And like I said, it was really an honor to just have him on today's podcast. And like I said, Ken, thank you so much for coming on today's show. And we will be in touch with you guys soon. We will be back very shortly with some more podcasts here on BoxingInsider.com radio. And thank you all for listening.
Stay up to date with all things Boxing Insider at BoxingInsider.com and across all social.
It's fact. I'm the best. You know what I mean? Sometimes I don't want to believe it myself, but it's the truth. I'm the best.
Until next week's fight, go to your premier boxing destination, BoxingInsider.com.